Hey everyone, welcome back. In the last session, we talked about different selector strategy where using which we can identify certain element. But in this session, let's talk about how we can interact with it. And before we go on, there is an important concept in which Cypress is built. Nothing but Cypress comments are asynchronous. So what does it mean? So looking at the two picture, at least you could make some sense. So the number one picture is people are waiting in the queue to transact with an ATM. So basically it is one by one. Otherwise, we can call it as asynchronous, meaning that the ATM can serve one people at a time and the request and response will be fulfilled on the same time. But at the picture at the bottom, there is a one waiter person who is serving almost all the tables. It means that he takes a request and goes and places the order to the chef or to the main cooking room and then comes back, takes another item. So he's not waiting to get fulfilled for one table. So that's a core main difference between synchronous and asynchronous. On that regard, so all Cypress comments are asynchronous. So what does it really mean? Maybe let's do a quick demo and understand how it is asynchronous. If we go back, let's quickly frame a test. We start with describe and then we know the pretty much syntax of it. Let's say this is async and then let's call it as a function. And within the describe block, let's have it as 8 block, which is nothing but our test block. Cypress commands are asynchronous. And then put a comma, and it also takes a callback function. And we talked about this in the earlier session. Now let's start writing this. So now for the purpose of our demo, let's launch this website. And we know how to launch a website. The command is pretty simple, cy.visit. And then this will take us to this page. And once we visited, let's say that for example, let's try to get this text. Welcome to the internet. If you right click, let's inspect. And I'm pretty sure this is either H1 or H2. This is an H1 class. So we can also remember it's one of the selection strategy where we can also provide a tag name alone. If the tag names are at least at the higher level in the hierarchy, either it is H1 or body, H2, whatever. So if we say cy.get and then the selector is a tag name, we didn't copy that. It's basically H1 and we want to get the text. Remember if you put dot, we expect to see something called text. There is nothing. But in Selenium, there is a method called getText where it will return you the text, or there is another method called getAttribute. And if you pass an attribute, that you will get an equivalent value. But here there is no direct method. But they achieved it through the jQuery. But how do we then get this text value of that particular value? So that's why they use a concept called closure where you need to, because this guy, if you just hover on the H1 get method, if you read at the method indicate the signature of it, the last thing that returns is if you after the colon here, it says that Cypress chainable, jQuery, and then HTML heading element. So it's basically returning a promise. So this concept in JavaScript is called as a promise. So in order to resolve a promise, in order to get something out of the promise, then we use a method called then. And in here Cypress, the then method takes the first argument that's a returned already yielded value. In our case, the get method will yield a HTML DOM element. We need to receive that element as a first argument to the function, callback function. So let's create a callback function and then this function takes the first argument as the whatever value. So this is a reference value, whatever name we wanted to provide, we can provide. Let me say this is heading. And then let's open the curly braces. Now our test function is ready. Now the purpose here is to get the text value of it. So we know that we are getting this as a HTML element. Now we've put it and then start typing text. Then now you are seeing that there is a text method coming. So select this one and this is the method. So surround this with the parenthesis. And if you hover on the method, the last thing that it is saying is that it's returning a string value. So let's save this as a string value as heading string, header string. Let's put var, let or constant, whichever is fine. Let's put this as heading string equal to this value. And for our purpose, let's also log this out in the console.log command log method. and then put this as header heading string. So it's a here important point that we wanted to cover is the asynchronous way of doing it. Now let's put a console.log, which is a standard output method for JavaScript, and then say that I'm inside, something like that. Now this is the second command from a CY point of view, because within the it block we have written the first command, second command is a cy.get, and then we are chaining it. And after this chaining command within the same it block of the test, let me also put one more console.log and then say I am outside. And let's save this one, and if you execute the test, let's see what's happening. Let's run this, let's invoke the app. There are n number of ways we can invoke the app, we have discussed in the past. The easiest way would be just if you have an npm script, you can click here and then this will invoke the app. Otherwise you need to go to the node modules and then the Cypress package, do it, or npm run Cypress, whichever key that you provided. So once it is opening, let's see that. Let's run our test called web interactions. So let's launch the site. Yes. So we are seeing that the log has given an output called welcome to the internet. This is fine. But we also provided the console.log. So the way we can see the console.log output is right click on the inspect and go to console. You will see that here. But interestingly, what we are trying to see is totally outside. I mean, totally kind of strange. It is saying that I'm outside coming first and I'm inside coming second. Why? Generally in the programming world, so if you come from a Java background, we tend to write every single line of code which is executing line by line. But here, if we go here, that's what the trick is. So we expected to run line number 17 before line number 21, but that's not the case. So that is where Cypress is making an important point. It's all asynchronous, meaning, so when the it function runs, this it block runs, it just simply takes a request of 1, 2 and give it to the Cypress to execute it. It's basically the Node.js process, which is single threaded, which takes all the requests at once and passes it to the process executor, and then comes back, takes another request. So by saying that, it takes the line number 11, it takes line number 13, and it takes also line number 21. So when it reaches line number 21, it simply prints out, but because it is sitting inside the Cypress, it's all queued up. So it's all sitting in the queue. So then Cypress executes one by one. So Cypress will first open the application, and then second it execute, it will get the h1 tag, and then it try to print that one in the console command log, and then it is also giving the standard output. So that's why we are seeing it in outcome. So that's an important learning in the JavaScript side of world of things. So because almost in JavaScript pretty much everything is asynchronous. So if you understand this logic, it will help you to understand what is happening behind the scene. And remember, if you have one more test block, so once the test block is completed, then it goes to the next test block. So that's how the design principle of Cypress. So now I hope that you understand the pretty much importance of the asynchronous methods. And yesterday, part of the last demo, we have seen how we can interact with the basic text box as well as the button. It's pretty simple, isn't it? Now let's move on and understand what are the different other elements that we can interact with. And before that, we also understand what are the key methods available in Cypress. So if you look at on the left side, the second column, it talks about the different method name. So we have something called click, which is pretty simple. We already talked about it. But remember that click method also takes the coordinates. If you wanted to provide a XY coordinate, you can also take that. And position also it takes it. Maybe you can say left, right, or center, whatever the way you want, that also takes it. And the documentation page clearly says that what are the different input it can take it. And next thing is a type. So pretty much if you can imagine any website, this could be the maximum thing that we do from an automation point of view, most of the time, except the rare case scenario. We either click it or type something or get the text of it. So pretty much in the first three method, most of the time we tend to do that. And fourth one is talking about the check and uncheck. If there is a checkbox, you can go and check it, uncheck it. And before that, the text method is not a Cypress method. So it's coming from, it's a jQuery method, not Cypress. That's why we put a then to resolve the promise. And once the promise is resolved, then we take the result. On top of the result, on top of the yielded subject, they call it as yielded subject, meaning that whatever is the promise is returned, that's a yielded subject. On top of that, we apply a method text so that to get the text of it. And similarly, check and uncheck also takes as a value as an argument. And in order to select a dropdown, we use select method here, and it takes a value or string, a value or text as an argument. We'll see that in the example. And there is a method called double click, right click, clear, title, URL. So except 3, pretty much everything can be directly applied on a yielded subject, meaning that if you once you get an element, and then on top of that particular thing you can chain it using click, type, or whatever. Now let's move to the first web element, which is dropdown. How do we handle a dropdown? So typically from a Selenium point of view, there are 3 different methods, in 4 different methods which can deal with the dropdown. Number 1 is select by visible text, select by index, select by value. But here they do not have such a longer 3 type of predefined method. There's single method which will pretty much takes 2 different input. It takes us an index, or it takes us in value, and it takes us a text. So in our use case, let's also see how do we select a particular drop-down value, and how do we check whichever is default is selected, and we'll also try and get all the values under the drop-down. And the equivalent value of getting all the values in the Selenium side is it get options. Okay, let's go back and then do the demo. If we go to our application, and here pretty much they have listed down all the web elements, possible web element, and we are taking a drop down here, and this becomes our URL. Let me go back and update the URL. We go here and then update this as my drop down, so it launch the site. So as a best practice, if you're doing this repeatedly, we can also put the before each so that it repeats on every single method that we're writing it. That's also possible. Well, we put before each is one of the hook that's provided by Mocha, before each, and then it also takes a callback function. My spelling is bad. Function, and then we can put the cy.y in the constant, so that in front of every it block, in front of every test block, it will open up the web page for us. So here let's say that this is a drop down. And in order to clean this, in order to read this more readable code or indent it properly, select Ctrl A, Alt Shift F will provide a clean look. And then save this. Once you save it, it gets automatically executing. You can see that it is getting the opening the page now. So we are here. Now let's go back and understand the application behavior. So when we come here, by default there is a select option called please select an option. And let me say that I want to go with the option number 1. So right click on this one. It's pretty simple. And if you go inspect this particular drop down, and most of the time, or 99% of the time, we see that this is a select tag. All the drop down comes as a select tag, and it is an attribute called ID. You know that how do we represent an ID in the jQuery world? It's basically we put prefix with the as symbol. So this becomes our ID value. And here, because I'm getting 2, it shouldn't be a problem because it's an ID, we are pointing it out. So this is the one ID drop down, and we have 3 values. Let's go back and then say within the it block, let's start writing cy.get, and this is the value of that. So it will get that value, and it's pretty simple. Just put select, and select, if you put it, just hover on it. So it takes as a text as an argument, first thing, or it's also taking a string value, the array string, basically meaning that if there is a multi-select drop-down where we need to select multiple options, we can also provide as a string option, the array, right? So now, because it's a single value, let me go with a single value. This is the value that we wanted to provide here. Look at it, either we can go with provide a value as 1, or we can even provide the value as the text as option 1. Let's do both. Let's say this is 1 because it is accepting a string argument. And if we run it, and see what's happening. So it is selecting the option 1. Let me go back and then say, instead of the index, instead of the value, let me also put it, say that I want to select by the visible text. In Selenium, well, it is called visible text. Here we use the same thing pretty much here and save it. The moment you save it here and come back, then you also see the similar one. So this is how we select a particular drop-down value using Cypress. Now, if we go back, and then another use case for us is to ensure that the predefined value, which value is already selected, right? For that one, let's look at that, because Selenium has a way to cut the default content, default value. But here there is no direct method which will say that by this is a default value selected. Let's go and understand the application behavior. If you click here and under the drop down, the first value here is the what we are looking for. Please select an option is for the first option. So this is the parent, these are all child. So either we can use the direct parent-child combination and then particularly point this option and then get the text of it and confirm whether please select option is the values there or not. That's one way. Cypress by default has another predefined set of methods which can do the same thing like a jQuery. Let's see that how it does. Let's go back and then say cy dot get. Let in the same drop down. And it may not be the best practice, because if you're interacting with a single element, we can also put this as everything inside of it. And then we can start iterating. Pretty much we can also chain it, because this is also giving the same output yielded value. So here if I go and then get the same drop down and put a dot. So there is a method called first. If you select the first method, meaning that this is a parent, it will come to the first child of it. It come to first child, and then as we used before, then, because then takes us the functional first argument as the element. Let's say this is a drop down element, and then let's open the parentheses, the curly braces. The moment we say that, we can put this default value. We can say cy.log, and then we want to get the text of it. As we have seen before, we can't put the directly apply the text method on top of the yielded value of Cypress. So that's why we are doing it here. Basically, I'm just trying to combine two steps. One, we just get the value text of it and then save it here. So we can also assert it, saying that the value of this is fine. So when we talk about assertion, then we'll understand how we can assert at the DOM level as well as application level. If we go back here, it says that please select option 1, everything. So pretty much I think it is giving us everything. It's not giving us what we want. If we go back and then see, yes, pretty much it gives every single option. So I think there's a slight tweak here. Once we, instead of get, we can also put, there is a children method. Within the children, get the first one. So this way, another way also available. So what we are saying is there is a children method on top of the returned subject, which is the DOM element, and there is a first one. Let's put now and then see, it's giving the same output. Now it's clear, it's giving us the what option that we want. So please select an option is the first option. And if you look at here, there is a number indicating that there are 3 elements matched, children, and we are getting the first element. So this is pretty simple. Instead of we write a predefined jQuery method or CSS method, we can use this predefined method as well, children first, and then do it. So by now we can understand how we can get a predefined whatever selected values there are not. And the third use case for us is to deal with the get all the values. Pretty much we have seen it right before itself. Before we put a children, we have pretty much seen that this will return the all the elements value. And because there is no predefined method, it is not giving you the very way it wants. Then you need to basically just split the string and then confirm whether all the elements are there or not. So that's the way we can iterate and handle the drop-down list. Okay, so now let's go back and understand what is the next thing. Next thing is all about the checkboxes. How do we select a checkbox? How do we uncheck it? How do we then confirm whether which is already selected or not? So if we go back, let me create another it block, which is nothing but the test block. We come here and then put another block. Let me say this is checkbox. I'll remove all of this. And this URL will change. And there is one other important clever method where if you put only, it will execute only this test under this suit, which is also good method from Mocha where you can only execute this step. So let's go back and get the URL for checkboxes. And pretty much you can also experiment using this website. There are a number of elements available. You can just go ahead and experiment. Pretty much you will use in the real application as well. So if we come here and then say update this as the endpoint, it is nothing but checkboxes. Now the URL is ready and we're going to execute only the checkbox block. And now let's get the element of the checkbox. If we go here and closely inspect it, either we can select this one, or if you select here, it comes as a form as an ID checkboxes. Under that there is one input and there is also another input. Now if I select the type as checkbox and Control C, Control F, Control V, which is giving me how many, these we do not have to worry about it, only these things are there. Okay, if I put type equal to text box and see, yes, there are two, it's available. So this could be a reliable solution where we can just put this combination and select the one we want. So here we put cy.get and within the single quote or double quote you put this one. Remember, by doing this it will return two elements instead of one, but we wanted always one, isn't it? And also another trick is, another hint is, if it is a type attribute you can also remove the type and then put the semicolon, sorry, this colon as well. This is exactly meaning that you are referring to a type attribute value. So this is also fine. Now it will return again two things. In order to get the number one first element, you can also say this is first element because it doesn't have a child, remember, that's why we can directly use the first and then say then check. So check method optionally accepts something, otherwise you can just pretty much say it. So this means that it will go and check the first element. Let me run this code and then go back and see what's happening. It says unrecognized one. Yeah, because we need to remove this, because if we're just using the only the value syntax, if you save it now, let's go back. Now we see that the checkbox one is also get checked, which is what we wanted, right? And coming here and then say that checkbox returns two matches, which is fine. So it's pretty simple, one line, because there are two checkboxes there. We are selecting the first one and then checking it out. So check method will automatically do that. And we also learned that if there is a type attribute, you can also remove it. Otherwise, if you put type is also here, which will also work the same way as we have seen before. If save it here and then go back, put another square bracket, save this one, which will pretty much return the same value. And here we need to remove the colon and put equal to, because that's a syntax. Now we see that the first two checkboxes are selected. But the application behavior is, when we launch the site, this checkbox 2 is automatically selected. So how do we then confirm whether this is already selected or not? Right? Now we know that how we can point out a particular checkbox, right? There is no method called second, but we know how we can look at by the index as well. We have learned that yesterday. There is also an index method, or we can directly point to the checkbox 2 as well. Meaning you can come to the form and then put an arrow and then come to the inbox 2, which will also return the same thing. So if I put cy.get and I pretty much, let me copy the same lines of code, and then this attribute is same, but instead of this, we learned that yesterday how we can point out a specific element. If you put hyphen and then eq, index here refers to the second one. Basically, index starts from 0, so let me put 1. So that means it pointed to the second element. And if I save this one, and now remember there is n number of vast amount of assertion available in Cypress. You put should, there are n number of methods available. One of them I think should be checked. So if this selects a value, this is an assertion will confirm whether the particular element is checked or not. So likewise, we'll talk about the more about the selectors, the assertions in the next sessions, but this will confirm us whether the second one is selected or not. Let's refresh this and then say yes. It says that expected input to be checked, which is giving a green signal, which means that it is passed. So this is how we can interact with the dropdown as well as the checkboxes. Also, we learned that how this asynchronous operation works in Cypress. The next session we'll talk about how the different things about we will talk about different sort of elements as well as the assertion. And thanks for watching.